listening to Light of Life on the Book of Love by Shaykh Dr. Muhammad bin Yahya An-Ninowy every Saturday at 5:15 p.m. only on IKIM FM.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد الصادق الوعد الأمين وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين، ورضي الله عن أصحابه وأزواجه وأحبابه وأتباعه أجمعين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وعملا وفهما في الدين. أما بعد، فالسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Inshallah, we will start this afternoon here with the Book of Love. And before we start, and we're going to start sort of in the mid of the first chapter, let me give you a bit of an orientation. First of all, the Book of Love is a book of notes, if you were to say. Notes that I have written over the past maybe 30 years. Through studying with some of my teachers, going through some tazkiyah issues, some personal experience issues. So I used to write the notes on the side, and then I figured why not collect them all together. And collecting them all together, that happened, and then eventually we got them translated into English, and then we put them in that. And then we thought what we're going to do it, because it was really tazkiyah, or the way to Allah Ta'ala, the suluk to Allah Ta'ala, the journey to Allah Ta'ala. So, or the maqam of Ihsan that we're trying to talk about. As the hadith of Jibreel, you all know. Islam, Iman, and then Ihsan. So this was the thing. So what do we call it? So I was thinking of calling it the journey to Allah Ta'ala. The journey of Ihsan. The tazkiyah, the sights of tazkiyah. Sounds and sights of, we went through a whole load of things. But then we looked at the core concept in almost every note that is there, and we found that the core concept is love. And it's repeated. Hubbullahi ta'ala, hubbu rasulihi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, hubbu al-sahaba, hubbu ahl al-bayt, hubbu al-salihin, hubbu a'mal al-khayr, etc. So it seemed like the common denominator between all of them was love. So then we called it the Book of Love. And what I thought was, obviously, because al-Ihsan, as the Prophet ﷺ defines it in Sahih Imam al-Bukhari Muslim, when he was asked by Jibreel about Islam, Iman, and then Ihsan, he replied that Ihsan is that you worship Allah as if you are seeing Him. If you are not seeing Him, He is seeing you. And in that definition, strange enough, I found Islam, Iman, and Ihsan. Not just Ihsan. Sure, the Prophet ﷺ said, defined Islam. Then Jibreel alayhi salam asked him, Ya Rasulullah, what is Islam? He says, Islam an tashhad an la ilaha illallah, iqamat as-salah, zakah, Ramadan, Sawm Ramadan, Hajj al-Bayt. Right, you know the five. Then he said, Ya Rasulullah, what is Islam? What is Iman? Then he told them, Iman an tu'mina billahi wa malaikatihi wa kutubihi wa rusulihi. The arkan of Iman that we know. Okay. And then he tells him, what is Ihsan? And then he tells him, Ihsan is that you worship Allah as if you are seeing Him. If you're not seeing Him, He's seeing you. In that, you find Islam, Iman, and Ihsan. Why? Well, first he tells him, Ihsan is that you worship Allah. First, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that means you believe in Allah, to worship Allah. Number two, worship. So Allah, that's an issue of Iman here. Worship is an issue of fiqh. Iqamatu salah, ita'u zakah, Sawm Ramadan, Hajj al-Bayt. So that's all, and ta'bud. Worship Allah. So you see that Islam is there, Iman is there, and then when he says, كَأَنَّكَ تَرَى, it meant now that you worship Allah Ta'ala only. You worship Him only, as if you're seeing Him only. If you're not seeing him, then realize that he's seeing you. So the journey then is to him. And maybe we can say the journey is from him to him. What do you mean from him to him? Well, you all know the ayah where Allah Ta'ala said, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Ya ayyatuha an-nafsul mutma'inna turji'i ila rabbik. O tranquil soul, return back to your Lord. Return back. Irji'i means not come. Irji'i means come back. Return back. And there's an indication there, a ruju', that means you came from there, you're going there. You came from Allah, you're going back to Allah. So it seems that the journey of ihsan is from Allah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why it's a journey of love. And that's why it's a book of love. How so? Because that ayah coincides immediately with the other ayah that Allah says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, fi Ali Imran. قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهِ. Say, if you love Allah, follow me, Allah loves you. يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهِ. Notice how the ayah. If you love Allah, follow me, Allah loves you. It begins with love, it ends with love. You begin from Him, you go back to Him. So it starts and ends with love, it starts and ends with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the reason, and then what we did, then we did divide the book into 4 chapters, as you will see. And the 4 chapters of the book are first awakening to self-realization. And why, I'm just giving you a little orientation before we start. Why awakening to self-realization? Because oftentimes we're in ghafla ourselves. We're absent, we're not present. We think we're present, but we're not. And Allah Ta'ala puts that in a verse that to me is awakeningly scary. And I think we can always share that. Look at Allah Ta'ala saying, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ. Which means, straightforward, it's like 3 words. They forgot Allah, Allah made them forget themselves. The verse, straightforward. Nasullah, they forgot about Allah. As a consequence, Allah made them forget themselves. What do you mean forget themselves? They're still living. They're living, but they forget themselves. They think they're living, but they're not really living. They forgot even themselves. They lost themselves in the process because they forgot about Allah Ta'ala. So the first is sort of awakening to self-realization, because if we don't locate where we are, we don't know how to go, where to go, in which direction to go. We're lost. The first thing that you do when you call someone and you're lost, they tell you, where are you? Well, you have to tell them where you are so they can come and get you. If you don't tell them where you are, they can't come and get you. Same with your own GPS machine and device. It first needs to locate where you are in order to tell you where to go. It cannot tell you where to go if at the beginning of it, you don't even know where you are. And I always say the concept is very simple. It's the lost and found concept you find in airports all the time. It's entertaining when I look at it all the time, because it's always lost before found. And that's the whole point. And that's where the scholars say, مَنْ عَرَفَ نَفْسَهُ فَقَدْ عَرَفَ رَبَّهُ, which is not a hadith, but it's a saying. It means if you know who you are, you're able then to know who your Lord is. But if you don't awaken to who you are, you're lost. You're lost from your own self, let alone from your Lord. Because of the ayah, نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ. They forgot about Allah, and as a consequence, Allah made them forget themselves. You may live 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years, 200 years, but if you're living away from Him, you're in ghafla. So that's the first chapter. That's what we're going to spend our time today and tomorrow, I think, most of the time, in the awakening to self. Because if we don't find ourselves, there's no way then we can find Him in that sense. And that's why An-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says in hadith sahih, رُفِعَ الْقَلَمِ. There is no writing, meaning you're not accountable if you're insane, if you're asleep. Why? Because you're lost in a sense. You don't have you're not present. And if you're sleeping, you're not present. And if you're lost your mind, you're not present. All right. The second chapter is signs on the path of love. So once we find ourselves, we need to take now a conscious walk to Allah, a conscious journey to Allah. And we'll talk about that maybe, but it doesn't mean, because a lot of people confuse about what do you mean by the journey to Allah? Do I need to go to some kind of secluded place and live all my life on a mountain, secluded from people? Do I need to seclude myself? Because all these things, and that's absolute, nothing is far from the truth, because the Anbiya alayhim salatu wassalam, they remained in their communities and they went and they took the journey to Allah Ta'ala. So we'll talk about that as well. And therefore I put signs on the path of love. What should you see? The scenery. Once you start walking, what's the scenery on the path of love to Allah Ta'ala? And then on the path of love, there is illumination. Illuminations that obviously as you're going closer to Allah Ta'ala, consciously, you are being illuminated. Obviously, you're getting closer and closer to Allah, and closer you are to Allah Rabbul Alameen, the more illuminated and illuminating you become. So I put some illuminations there. And then I finished the whole book with living your love, so we can continue on the path of love. And again, why did I call it love, the path of love versus anything else? It's synonymous with tazkiyah, synonymous with ihsan, synonymous with tasawuf, if you want to call it, in that meaning of the book and the sunnah, obviously. It's synonymous with all these things. Why? Because the path is love to love. Like I said, قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهِ فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهِ. Say, if you love Allah, follow me, Allah loves you. It starts with love, it ends with love. And there is a hadith that I've put at the beginning of the book. There are many hadith, but I did not put them all. But you see the Prophet ﷺ himself is calling unto Allah Ta'ala, saying, Allahumma inni as'aluka hubbak, wa hubba man yuhibbuk, wa hubba amalin yuqarribuni ila hubbik. Ya Allah, I ask you for your love, and I ask you for the love of those who love you, and I ask you for the love of everything that brings me closer to your love. And I find this hadith, like the other hadith, amazing, because An-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam himself, who is the messenger of Allah Ta'ala, and who is the final of messengers and prophets, is asking Allah and pleading to Him, Ya Allah, I ask you to grant me your love. And as if that path of love is limitless, because you are going to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So with that in mind, I want to move to the prerequisite in the whole thing here, and it is Ihsan. Today we have separated Islam, Iman from Ihsan, and we've left our deen as Islam and Iman. Iman, we believe in our mind. Islam, we practice. But Ihsan, the heart, we don't worry about the heart. So much to the point that we've separated what we love from what we must do rationally. Meaning, for example, we feel we must do salah. It's a fard, so we do it. But if salah happens to be coinciding with something that you love, then you must do the salah, and your heart is with that which you love, whatever it is. Be it the people that are present that you long to be with immediately, not with Allah. Be it the food even, be it an event, be it whatever it is. And people now seem to rush away from Allah rather than to rush to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now surely it might become, one might say, but look Shaykh, what do you mean? It's very difficult to live. What do you mean? We're human beings, we're social beings, we can't just always be with Allah Ta'ala with our hearts. Allah Ta'ala did not ask us to be in prayers 24/7, but He asked us to be in prayers 5 times a day. He did not tell you need to be in complete salah 24/7, but 5 times a day. So the issue all about, because the journey of love all starts in the heart. So I'm going to start at page 33 and line 33 basically, because we've done already 32 up to 32 elsewhere. So we'll continue that journey, and inshallah we'll get something of it. Because if we always start at the beginning everywhere, we will never get to finish anything. So, I'll try. That's why I gave you a bit of an intro, so we can carry ourselves, inshallah, together on that journey of love. And the whole point of this book is not fillers, not to just fill the page. So we also thought about that, because there were notes, we could have put them in half, even not half, in 1/3 of the book. Book is about 300. We could have put 3 in 1 page, would have been about 100. But then the idea came from, I like to consult people and share their mind and brain and power. They said, no, let's keep every line on its own page, because the point is to reflect more than to talk, to contemplate more than to speak. And oftentimes when we read, we're just jamming a lot of words, and we're not leaving a space for reflection and contemplation. And the space we're leaving there is for reflection and contemplation. Maybe if you want to write a word or two, but it's really not for writing as much as contemplating, because the point of aphorisms, or a point of these notes, spiritual notes, if you were to say, is to get us to awaken, to get us to think, to get us to reflect. And everyone has their own journey to Allah Ta'ala. The scenes might be slightly different, but the general scenes are the same. The specific scenes may be different. So with that, I'm going to go to page number 33, and the line says here, or the note says, the more love you have, the less veils will exist. It is impossible to love and not receive it. To love Allah unveils you to see His love. Well, we said Iman is love to start with. And that's by prophetic decree, not by my decree. It's actually by Allah Ta'ala. But if the Prophet ﷺ makes it so clear, في صحيح الإمام مسلم, where he says, لن تؤمنون حتى تحابوا أولا. You will not believe until you have love first. You will not believe. لن تؤمنوا. You will not believe. Your iman will not be complete. لن تؤمنوا حتى تحابوا أولا, he says. Until first you love. As if the saying here, the more you love, or the more love you have, the less veils you have. Love melts the veils, collapses distances. There are many veils we have that veils us from love. The first veil, obviously, is not knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not seeking Allah, meaning. You say, how do I know Him? Well, not seeking Him. What do you mean seeking Him? Look for Him. Search for Him. Search for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Go on. You've heard about many of the people in the old days. They say that Sayyidina Shaykh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, for example, wa rahimahullah, went into 20-some years in the desert seclusion, looking in the desert. What was he doing? They said he was trying to find himself. He was trying to find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not in the sense in the desert that he's trying to find Allah. Allah is not confined to a place to be found, nor Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is matter, that He is subject to place or time. But he's trying to find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the sense that there are so many things that are coming to the heart. And sometimes you need to go and to find Allah Ta'ala. Allah Ta'ala is not necessarily in the masjid where you're praying, yani in that sense. Because what does that mean? You might be going to pray, and your body is praying, your mind is praying, but your heart is not. Your heart is busy outside of the masjid. You leave your heart where your shoes are. Or you give your heart actually totally away. Not even where the shoes are, not at the door of the masjid. You leave your heart somewhere else. You just come and pray with your body and mind. In Ramadan, you just come and do fasting with your body and mind. In Hajj, you go do Hajj with your body and mind. But your heart is not in Hajj. Your heart is not there. You're just going through the motion. And the first thing we need to do is look for Allah. Look for Him. What do you mean look for Him? Look for Him in your salah. Meaning what? Bring your heart to be in His presence. Bring your heart to be in His presence. And that's where Al-Islam talked about Salatul Layl, or At-Tahajjud, at the end of the night. Why does Allah Ta'ala tell His Prophet ﷺ, قُمِ اللَّيْلَ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا? stand up and pray in the night in prayer except just a little of the night? Well, the night, because Allah Ta'ala knows that we are weak, we as human beings. خُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ ضَعِيفًا. But nighttime, less noise, less people, less distractions, easier to collect your whole entire self and being onto Allah's presence and be with Him. Easier, helps you. That's why the hadith comes and tells you, Allah Ta'ala tells us in the third night, every third night, hadith al-Bukhari Muslim, هَلْ مِن مُسْتَغْفِرٍ فَأَغْفِرْ لَهُ. Is there anyone who's seeking istighfar so I can forgive him? هَلْ مِن سَائِلٍ فَأُعْطِيَهُ. Is there anyone who's asking for anything so I can grant him? هَلْ مِن مُسْتَرْزِقٍ also في لفظ. Is there anyone who's seeking rizq so I can give him? Lots of people, they come and say, Shaykh, pray for me. Shaykh, I have this. Pray. And they all know. What people don't know is it's all in front of you. Sure, it's good. You ask other people to make dua for you. And that's only right. But Allah is closer to you than them, than they are closer than them. Allah is closer to you than you are to you. Reach out to Him, He's there. The first thing is, the first veil is not seeking Him. Not seeking Him is a veil. And that's why we talk about Allah, we don't talk to Him. We talk about the deen, we don't live the deen. We all learn about how to talk about the deen. And some people, that's what they do for a living. They talk about the deen. Talking about the deen, living the deen are two different things. And I always say that's the difference between philosophy and theology. Philosophy is talking about religion. Theology is living the faith, not talking about it only, living it. And today, we want to talk about the book of love, to live it, not just talk about it. And that's the whole point from what we're doing here today. The more love you have, number 33, the less veils. And what that means is, there's no love, there's all kinds of veils. All kinds of veils. The first veil is not looking to seek Him. We need to make a conscious effort to seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Conscious effort in our salah, even in our days. What is dhikr actually? Except seeking Him. Ya Allah, I was in forgetfulness of You. Now I remembered You after I was forgetful, so I'm seeking You. That's what dhikr is. Dhikr is not utterance of the tongue. In reality, dhikr is actually seeking Him after you are forgetful of Him and now wanting to be with Him. Let's stop here, inshallah ta'ala. We'll take a break and we'll be right back. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وآله والحمد لله رب العالمين.